Welcome back, everybody, to Between Two Sermons. So great to have you with us. And once again, we got Rob Catalani sitting next to me.
Good to be here.
Yes. And we're in the book of Daniel once again. Yep. This is third week now.
Yeah.
So chapter 2, but
right
after your introduction.
Mm-hmm.
And we're delving right into some of the familiar stories of Daniel now.
Yes.
So if people have grown up in the church, they may have heard kind of this story before of Daniel. Not the most famous, but one of the ones.
Getting there.
One of his greatest hits, so to speak.
Right. Dreams.
Yeah. So let's actually, before we even get into your points, do a little background on that.
Yeah. It's interesting. When we speak about Daniel, he's in the open chapter. He's given these gifts to interpret, to understand, to be wise, but also it says to interpret dreams.
Yeah,
that's unusual. We don't think of that typically in the New Testament necessarily, or in our everyday life. So that's important.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the reason for that? Well, many, I suppose. One is we have to keep in mind that God works in different ways in different times. Joseph got a great dream, and there's more than one, but that's the one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
The opening book of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
You could say the whole book of Genesis concludes or comes to a head in the dream of Joseph, which is realized, and that was huge. So God spoke through dreams. Why did he do it then or now? Well, certainly then there was no written copy of the Bible floating around anywhere. There was no New or Old Testament. Probably in Daniel's day, pretty much the same. So, but that is the way the cultures, remember we're in Babylon, certainly the non-revealed religion cultures, that being Judaism at the time, or the Jewish religion, they believed that God spoke through dreams and visions, and they even had sort of these professional, priests of a kind, magicians, diviners, of which Daniel was trained. So Daniel kind of came into this kingdom, was socialized and trained in the ways of the Babylonians, and one of those ways, interestingly, was chapter 1 and 2 in dream interpretation. So it's one of these things where it almost seems as if God uses that. You might say the dreams that other magicians and diviners got were of a different quality, right? What Daniel's really getting is Daniel gets his understanding through a revelation from God. God reveals to him. Daniel says, listen, I can't interpret dreams, he says to the king. I don't really have any special powers, even though I did study at your school. He says, but the God of heaven has revealed this to me in a vision. So, that's just something to keep in mind. Now, you and I sort of debated, I suppose, today about people having dreams from God, and we hear these great stories, especially in foreign cultures and cultures that or unreached cultures, I should say.
Right.
But you and I, God still speaks to us. We think of it typically as the Holy Spirit revealing. Maybe he uses the word a lot, but he's still revealing things to me.
Yes.
I didn't see my greed. I didn't see my sin. I didn't understand my blind spot. God's leading me to do this or do that. So God still speaks to us. So there's where we got to do some, application.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things that is true in here is that Daniel is taking something that, what God is doing in this situation is really taking something that is familiar in the culture, but he is one-upping it.
That's
and he's
great.
saying, actually, I have more power than your power is here. My power is way beyond that.
No, that's cool. That's a great way of thinking about it.
Yeah, because one of the cool things about this is we get a chance to go into the passage a little bit deeper than we're able to do on a Sunday morning. So one of the things that I notice about the passage is in the beginning where Nebuchadnezzar is saying, and you touched on this briefly, but Nebuchadnezzar is saying, not only do I want you to interpret the dream, I want you to tell me what I dreamed.
I know.
And all the astrologers are like,
that's not normal.
That's crazy. Right. No one can do that.
What they studied supposedly was the art of how to make sense of what the text or the dream. This means that.
Yes.
But to tell you, like, what did I just think about?
Right.
Or what did I just dream? That seemed to be unusual based upon the response, and made it twice as difficult.
Yeah.
Twice as crazy.
Yeah. And then the king goes crazy.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, I'm going to kill you all then.
Right.
I mean,
Daniel too.
Yeah. And that's where the first point really comes in.
Yeah.
So there's this background to it of, I think the way that you express it was those who trust God don't need to fear, what
be captured by fear,
be captured by fear.
And I think it's so, doesn't mean we don't fear.
Yeah.
It's a question of, does fear about anything, our times, the good times, the bad times, the world we live in, there's a lot of things that we could apply this to, but do those things need to dominate and capture our imagination so much so that it sort of paralyzes us?
Yes.
I think that's very true. And I'm sure if we knew everything there was to know, I'm sure Daniel lost an hour of sleep. I'm sure Daniel was fearful. He was told his life was going to end if he didn't interpret a dream. And his friends and this group of people he hung out with in this school of diviners or court officials. So I'm sure there was a level of fear, but what's beautiful about it, I love it, is it says Daniel, I don't. He didn't know how. He said, remember the exact words. He, with tact, I think the word at least in the NIV. With tact, he approached the king's servant and said, "Tell me more about this situation. Why is this such a harsh decree? And can I get an audience with the king?" Right. Sort of, by faith, thinking, maybe I can make a difference here. And he couldn't have made a difference without God's intervention. But that to me is a great, I admire that. I aspire to that. Because I know to be a Christian does not mean that God's going to make life easy. Problems are going to go away. This is false gospel. That, your trouble's going to go away. That you and I are going to live in a sort of a parallel universe of problem free. Right. No. Very often trouble comes, even for people like Daniel. It goes from very good to very bad in one chapter. Yeah. But keep your head about you, as it says in Timothy. And Daniel's able to not allow his fear to dictate his actions, and that's a great thing.
Yeah, and the way he goes to his friends, it's such a beautiful image too, of going to his friends and saying, "Hey, we need to pray about this."
Yeah.
And essentially they do. They all pray. Yeah. And then God answers the prayer. Yeah. And gives Daniel the dream and the interpretation to the dream.
It's amazing.
As he's doing that, which is phenomenal. Which brings us to the second point, which is maybe the central.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Verse the central idea of this whole thing, and maybe one of the central verses of all of Daniel.
I think so.
Is that God is the great revealer of mysteries.
Yes. Yes. And I loved what we were just talking about a few minutes ago with the team. That this has always been true, of course, but we live in a day, here in the 21st century where. Maybe we're on the back side of it, but when you and I were kids or our parents, where we just were committed to, rational thinking and logical thinking, and science is the answer to everything. And of course, we embrace all these, God created the sciences, but, as Hamlet would say, there's more to heaven and earth than fits in your philosophy, that famous line that I think the Bible would say, you see some things, but there's a lot you don't see. And God is mysterious. And God is, there's more to life than what you can feel and know about yourself and what's around you. There's an invisible reality, a spiritual reality, and there's mystery. And what Daniel is affirming to this wise and powerful king is God is the ultimate creator of truth and mysteries and revealer of mysteries. And really, there's many things that you're not going to know. Paul will say this, as you mentioned earlier. 1 Corinthians 2 is a great parallel verse. Timothy, you had mentioned. We're receivers of great mystery, right? And we have to come to a place. Maybe our culture is getting there, which would be a good thing, to realize the world only provides so many answers. If we really want to know the truth about God, about life, we have to recognize there's a lot we don't know. There is a mystery to it. And God is the ultimate place to answer those questions.
Yeah. He is able to answer mysteries, and it's so beautiful. He's a God of mystery.
Yeah,
too.
No question.
I mean, he is. That's, I think, one of the things that's so attractive about him is he can't figure him out.
No.
He's a God of mystery. Like in Ephesians, I'm just, off the top of my head now thinking about Paul talking in Ephesians about this great mystery that Jews and Gentiles would be together in one body.
Yeah.
He goes, I don't
No one saw
understand
that coming.
No one saw it coming.
Yeah.
And again, he's talking about in Ephesians, he talks about husbands and wives reflecting Christ in the church. This is a mystery, but who could figure that out?
That's right.
It's like God is this God of mystery. He's not inviting us into just to download information. He's inviting us into an adventure, really, with him.
Yes.
With this God of mystery where he reveals these things.
Which is why even to the title, faithful. What's the subtitle in a faithless world?
Faith in a faithless world.
Yeah, faith in a faithless world. Faith. I mean, the reason faith is so important in the Christian life is not because God likes to play with us or something. It's because there's such an uneven balance between what can be known and what God knows and what we can know.
Right.
It's almost like a parent and a child, except in much greater measure. You're only gonna. You only share so much with your 3-year-old or your 5-year-old or your 7-year-old, not because you're being selfish, but because they can't understand it. And you have to develop a trust. They have to learn to trust you because they don't understand traffic or how electricity works or whatever the issue is. And multiply that greatly with God. What is knowable and what you and I as finite human beings can know, such a huge gap. And God is inviting us to trust him. And he may reveal things to the world and through the Bible and to you or to me that he doesn't reveal to everybody. So he's giving, there's a real give and take there, but we're always going to be at a limit.
Yes.
And God is always going to be the only person who understands the whole big picture. In that sense, he will remain mysterious to the wisest Christian person. And that's what faith's about.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
And so then Daniel delivers this vision to the king, and kind of crazy image of the head of gold, and then you got the chest of silver and the midsection of bronze and the legs of iron and feet of iron and clay. And you kind of broke that down for us. It's this like very deliberate, talking about historical things that have happened. So in that, it's like, wow, he is a revealer of mystery. But it was beyond that God is in control. I think that's what
I think that's well said. I forget the last point. What did we say? Your present experience is not the end of the story, or whatever.
The evil of this. The evil. Something. The evil that you encounter is not the end of the story.
Evil you experience is not the end of the story. And, because Daniel's in this, trouble, and he's got more troubles to come. You have more troubles to come. I have more troubles to come, because we live in a broken world. We live in a world that God is sovereign over, but the kingdoms of this world have not fully become the kingdoms of our Lord and Christ, as it says in the book of Revelation. So we're in this sort of already but not yet, as the theologians would say. And so what this vision does, though, and it's so comprehensive, and it's some of it's straightforward history, as you're saying, these succeeding kingdoms that may go from the time of Daniel to the time of Jesus. So that's ancient history for us. But then there's more. There's this rock, and that comes in and out of nowhere, cut out without hands. What does that mean? Well, it means it's different than the other ones. It's not. It's out of left field. It means it's supernatural, because it's cut out without hands. It's not crafted out of how you get gold and bronze and iron. It's not made that way. Maybe it's saying God, right? I think it comes from God, and it smashes the fourth and final kingdom. And then it's like one crazy thing after another. Then it grows into a rocket so big it encompasses the universe. Okay. Wow. What does that mean? Well, it seems to mean, as we put together other pieces of the Bible, that Jesus himself I don't is maybe Daniel didn't know this, but
Right.
Jesus clearly identifies himself as the rock. We call him, upon this rock I will build my church, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so the message is, what would be the message to these exiles who they're not going to get all the fine points of the eschatology because it hadn't really been realized yet, maybe. But they understood that God was in control. God was going to build a kingdom that was going to overwhelm all the other kingdoms of the world, and that he was going to, in the end, his purposes would be realized. His kingdom that is in you and me in a personal spiritual form today in the person of the Holy Spirit, that is ultimately going to cover all of reality. And God's going to win in the end. I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but that could be encouraging. It should be encouraging to us, even today, with all that history behind us, and the history of Daniel, and even the life and death and resurrection of Jesus. We still live in a world that's already not yet. So that can hopefully be encouraging to us.
Yeah, I think that's just what stands out to me, that there's this hope that in the story of Daniel that should be a hope for us as we feel like we live in exile sometimes.
That's right.
For many of us, we're feeling like we're living in a foreign land from time to time.
Yeah.
And it should, those same things should be encouraging to us and hope-filling for us, that God actually cares, that God actually will reveal mysteries in the midst of, he wants to give us wisdom, as James says, James 1, if any of you lacks wisdom, go to God and he will give it without finding fault. That is part of God's character. And then actually, no matter what our circumstances, the final word is in his hands. He is the one that has the power.
That's right. And as I just came up with this title, that's not from any smart person, but living the dream. So Daniel is revealing a dream. It's really to Nebuchadnezzar, but obviously it goes way beyond him.
Right.
So that and it's about God's kingdom. You and I have an opportunity to really live into that dream, the dream of God's kingdom, the reality of God's kingdom, even today. I think that's the point.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you all for joining us. And as I think about this, I can't help but wonder, are there things in your life that you need wisdom about, that you're struggling right now going, I don't know if God could answer this, but I can't figure it out on my own. I know I got those things in my life from time to time, and more times than not, actually. And I think this might be an invitation for you to express that to those around you. This is what I need wisdom with right now. And this is where I would love God to answer. If I could ask God to answer and give me wisdom for something, this is what I would love for him to answer. I got to believe he's sitting there going, I'd love to answer that for you, because one of my characteristics is I'm a revealer of mysteries.
Yeah, huge.
So that might be a great way to start your conversation today. And that hopefully will turn into a great one and get you back here next week at Between Two Sermons.